promised me to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Our story begins with Baying, a naughty girl who always quarreled at school. Then there is Artet, the son of her father's friend, who always tried to control her, but did not succeed. She would hit him with her bag and walk away, begging the driver not to tell her father and mother what had happened, as she always does every time she is in a similar situation. When she returns home, the scars of the fight are visible on her face, and she cannot hide what happened no matter how hard she tried. As soon as she hears her father's voice calling her, she tries to hide behind furniture or in her room so that her father does not see her bruised face, but she did not know that he knew her well. He pretended to have left the room and then surprised her when she got out, standing right behind her. He saw the marks of the fight on her face clearly, but he was not surprised. It was a frequent occurrence for him. Her parents loved her very much, and they hugged her warmly every time they returned home, as if trying to compensate for their frequent absences due to their constant busyness. Artet, on the other hand, had subtle feelings for Ping since childhood, but never expressed his feelings for her, perhaps because he wasn't sure what he really felt. On a rainy day, Artet sat under a tree contemplating the sky, while Ping stood far away, silently watching him. She had a lot of emotions in her heart that she couldn't tell, but she knew the moment of confession was approaching. As she slowly walked towards him, he turned to her and looked directly into her eyes, as if they were reading each other's thoughts without needing words. Bing got closer until she was a step away from him. I stood in front of him for a moment, then sat silently next to him. She felt cold raindrops streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't care. There was a long silence between them, but it was not an ordinary silence, but full of words that were not said. Bing said in a low voice, "Artet, why are you here alone?" He looked at her for a moment, then replied, "Sometimes I need to be alone to think." She smiled lightly and said, "And sometimes you don't have to be alone when you think." He looked at her again, as if trying to understand what her words meant. He was not used to seeing this seriousness in her eyes. Ping was always the naughty girl, who stirred up trouble wherever she went, but now she was different. She was quieter, more mature. Suddenly she said to him, "Why did you always care about me? Why have you always been by my side?" Artet sighed, then looked away and said, "Because I couldn't see you hurt. No matter how hard you tried to keep me away, I always knew you needed someone to be by your side." There was silence again, but this time it was different. There were unspoken feelings between them, feelings that neither of them dared to admit. As the days passed, their relationship began to develop. It wasn't easy. They each had their own past haunting them. Baying, who had a difficult childhood full of loneliness, and Artet, who was carrying the burden of responsibility for his family after the financial crisis they went through. But despite all this, they found refuge in each other. But things weren't always rosy. There were people who didn't want to see their relationship flourish. Baying's father, who would have preferred his daughter to stay out of trouble, wasn't sure Artet was the right person for her. On the other hand, there were those who tried to differentiate between them in every possible way, using lies and deception. One night, Bing received a mysterious letter telling her that Artet was hiding something from her. She didn't believe it at first, but she began to notice a change in his behavior. Was he hiding a dangerous secret? Or is there someone trying to sow doubt between her and him? Thus, events began to escalate, and the relationship between them became threatened. Will they be able to overcome these obstacles, or will the past come back to haunt them again? It wasn't long before Artet began to feel the pressure, and he was no longer the same as before. He was trying to be strong, but inside he feared losing Bing. He knew there were people who didn't want them to be together, and he felt like he was in a race against time to protect the relationship he finally started with. On the other hand, Bing was trying to uncover the truth about the messages she received. She didn't want to believe anything without evidence, but she couldn't ignore the suspicions she began to control. She decides to confront Artet and ask him directly about it. That night, they met at the place where they had always met. She looked at him with bewildered eyes and said, "Artet, is there something you haven't told me? Something I should know?" Artet looked at her silently, then took a deep breath and said, "Bing, there are things from the past that I don't want to affect us now. But Dear viewers, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a nice comment.